helping you with Acorn and RISC OS computing.
Okay then, Cliff. So it's Cliff Hatch, and well, he'll tell you what he's going to tell us about. Over to you.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick. And hello, everyone.
Hello.
These are replicas of two classic mini-computers that were manufactured by the Digital Equipment Corporation. This is a Pdp-8i from 1968, and this is a Pdp-11 70 from 1975. These are available as kits from Oscar Mullen, and you can read all about them on his website, which is called Obsolescence Guaranteed. They're working models. They've got Raspberry Pis inside them, and they function exactly as the original machines did, but they are, of course, scaled down. On the originals, these consoles were mounted on boxes the size of filing cabinets, and sometimes twice the height of a filing cabinet. So it's a really good thing they're scaled down. It means you can get more retro computers in your house without taking up too much space. My connection with these machines is that I used them as an engineering student and at work. The first machine I learned to program in assembly code was a Pdp-11, not this exact model, but one very like it. And I still have my original processor handbook from that time. I spoke about the Pdp-8 at a previous meeting, and it was a very simple machine. It was built from minimal 1960s hardware, but it was nevertheless very useful. It found applications in all sorts of diverse areas, and it effectively opened up a new market for mini computers and set the scene for the later Pdp-11. There were 5 years in between the first Pdp-8 appearing and the first Pdp-11, and DEC engineers were able to exploit hardware improvements that had occurred in that time to create a much more powerful machine. So I've got a few slides I want to show you. Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, good, good. So these are just a few of the features of the Pdp-11 which I thought stood out and set it apart from the earlier Pdp-8. It was a 16-bit machine, and it was a good approximation to a modern complex instruction set computer, or CISC. And it had 16-bit addresses, so it could address 64 kilobytes of memory. DEC always quoted memory sizes in kilowords. That's a bit confusing because the machines have different word lengths. So I've converted everything to kilobytes, which is the standard we're used to today. That's a modest increase in size from the Pdp-8, which could take 48K maximum. But on the Pdp-8, memory was divided up into 6K fields, and that wasn't the case on the Pdp-11. Your program could access the full 64K as a single block of memory with no restrictions, so that was a big advantage. Of course, in 1970, when the first Pdp-11 appeared, 64K was a huge memory. And then a few years later, it didn't look so huge. So later models had memory management modules, and they supported virtual memory. And that took them up to 18-bit physical addresses, which supports 256K, or 22-bit, which supports 4 megabytes. The machine had 6 general-purpose registers, as opposed to a single accumulator in the Pdp-8. And that felt like a real luxury, because when you're writing programs for the Pdp-8, you're forever swapping things in and out of the single accumulator. And with Pdp-11, you had much less swapping to do. It had a stack pointer, register 6. And I put an exclamation mark after that, because this wasn't a normal feature of small computers in the 1970s. because of, with the Pdp-8, the pressure to minimize the amount of hardware was so extreme that they couldn't include a stack pointer. But by 1970, they could. And Register 6 was used automatically when interrupts occurred to save the return addresses. But in fact, the general purpose registers R0 to R5 could also be used as stack pointers. So you could create a number of stacks for any reason you wanted. And of course, it had a program counter. It had a lot of addressing modes, and this is one of the main features that qualifies it as a CISC. It had register, indirect, auto-increment, auto-decrement, and indexed, and also quite a lot of permutations of those. And because of the addressing modes, they included those that you need to make efficient use of stacks. So the combination of the stack and these addressing modes meant that you could write efficient reentrant code. That's code that can be called recursively. And so that means if the computer is executing a routine and it's interrupted by a higher priority task, which then calls the same routine, it doesn't get confused because the parameters that go with each call kept separately on the stack. And that's useful in multitasking environments and also for managing the recursive structures that arise in high-level languages. And the emphasis here is really on efficient, because you could write reentrant code for the Pdp-8. There's nothing to stop you doing your own stacking in software. But that made your program slower, longer, and harder to understand because there was no standard way of doing it. So the Pdp-11 was a big improvement in this area. It also supported position-independent code that you could load at any point in memory. And that's an advantage for memory management. And another thing that was different was the Pdp-11 had memory-mapped input-output devices. And on the Pdp-8, it had dedicated I/O instructions. Well, in fact, it only had one input-output instruction. You then set bits in that instruction to identify every read-write operation on every device. So that meant that because new peripherals were being developed for these machines all the time, when you put something new on the Pdp-8, it effectively extended the instruction set with variations of the input-output instruction. And on the Pdp-11, it didn't affect the instruction set at all. You just had to reserve a few memory locations for the device, and the programs would access those devices just as they would any other location in memory. So that's not a comprehensive list at all. It's just some of the things that struck me as most obvious differences between the Pdp-11 and earlier machines. But it's enough to show that the wasn't just a souped up Pdp-8. It was a very different machine. So there were a number of operating systems written for it. Digital Equipment Corporation wrote RT11, which is a single user system, and RSX11, which is a multi-user system. Both of those are good for general programming. They supported Fortran, BASIC, C, and assembly code. And they were also good for applications that required real-time response, such as the monitoring and control of industrial processes. Another very well-known operating system, Unix, from Bell Laboratories. This was written mostly in the C programming language, which was also developed by Bell Labs. And Unix was consistent and versatile. It had only a single file structure. All files in Unix are just a stream of bytes. And its commands could be plugged together in all sorts of useful ways using pipes and redirection. A pipe takes the output from one command and conveys it to the input of another. Redirection allows you to redirect to any file or input-output stream you want. Unix was useful for general program development. And I first encountered it in the early 80s, where it was used to provide, well, it was used for programming and also to provide an email system for the research center I worked at. It was my first experience of email. And it was used a lot for word processing as well. And Unix was much easier to develop and maintain than systems written entirely in assembly code. I think a lot of people felt when C and Unix appeared that they were something really special. They looked like really good examples of how to make things work well by keeping them simple. And it also marked a bit of a revolution in the way that operating systems were written, because previously it was normal to write them in assembly code. And after this point, it was normal to write them in C. And part of so that helped to establish the Pdp-11's place in history, because it not only marked a point where the power of small computers increased dramatically, but also a revolution in the way that operating systems were designed. All these operating systems, RT11, RSX11, and Unix, were command-driven. So they predated graphical windows and menu systems. And that, of course, meant that there was nothing intuitive about using them. You had to sit down and look at the manual. There was no alternative. And something on them that looked rather primitive was that they all offered line editors as standard. Line editors really designed for teletypes, because you can't do full screen editing on a teletype. And I think the reason that they were the standard was some Pdp-11s were sold with deck writers, an updated teletype. And they didn't have CRT monitors, so you still had to have a line editor. But if you buy the Pdp-11 kit and you want to program it, the best thing is to look out for the 80 by 24 character full screen editors. These were designed to use terminals like the VT100, which is a very popular CRT monitor used with the Pdp-11. And they are not as good as today's systems, because you still had to remember a lot of keyboard commands to use them, but they were a huge step up from line editors. I don't know if anybody is nostalgic about line editors. I'm certainly not. I think nostalgia has limits. They were really, really tedious to use. So here's a picture of the dismantled Pdp-11 kit, and I think that gives the impression it's not a complicated kit to build. It's relatively few components. You can see the Pi 3 installed on the back of the main PCB. And the cables connected to the back panel are for power and USB. And it doesn't actually show up on the photograph, but the back panel has a lot of perforated cutouts in it. And these will take any sort of size of socket that you might want to mount, and you just push out the ones that you want to use. It makes them very, very easy to mount, and makes it a bit easier to build. So software, you need software for the Raspberry Pi. And you need to obtain Pi OS from raspberrypi.org, which is a version of Linux. And you also need to follow the instructions on OSCA's website to obtain SimH, which simulates the Pdp-11. And it's a remarkable piece of software. It also simulates the Pdp-8 and a lot of other computers from the same era. And it's actually it's available standard as standard in most Linux distributions. but it's a special version that you need for the kit because it has some extra software to drive the switches and LEDs on the console via the Pi's GPIO pins. And you also need disk images for RT11 and RSX11 and Unix, and there are a few others as well. Incidentally, before I leave this slide, if you wonder what the green sticking plaster is on the PCB, the metal cases around the USB ports on the Pi get uncomfortably close to the soldered terminations on the PCB. They don't actually make contact, but to make sure that nothing touches where it shouldn't, Oscar recommends sticking a sheet of plastic between the Pi and the board, and that's what that is. One of the most thought-provoking bits of the construction, soldering the switches in place, because there are 30 of them and there are 5 different types, and it's really important to get them all in the right place and the right way up, because some of them work by being pressed down, some of them by being pressed up, and some of them are toggles which you put down or up and they stay there. So Oscar provides 2 templates to help with this, and you can see one of them is perched on the tip of all the switches, and the other one runs along underneath the switches, and they've got legends on them showing very clearly which type of switch goes in which location and which way up it should be. And this assembly, the 2 templates and the switches, is held together temporarily with cable ties. I removed these before I took the photograph, but they hold the whole assembly firmly together, and you put them in the PCB and solder them up, and it makes sure that everything is aligned correctly. It would be a difficult job, but the templates actually make it quite easy. When you're finished, you snip the cable ties, discard the top template, and the bottom one is redundant too, but it stays in place permanently underneath the switches. As I would say, it's an easy kit to build, provided you can solder. There is quite a lot of soldering to do. So this is the Pdp-11 Console. Actually a photograph of the kit, but it's a really good facsimile of the real thing. The switches, the selector switches on the right-hand side are a slightly different style, but apart from that, I think it's pretty much identical. So this was used routinely in the early days with paper tape systems, because you had to toggle in a bootstrap loader to get the machine running. Every program you had to set the start address. But the era of paper tape was coming to an end around the mid-70s. It was starting to be phased out in favor of disk operating systems. And after that point, users had no reason really to use this panel at all. And it was still used for diagnostics by service engineers. But I think by the mid-70s, it was becoming apparent that the days when it was useful to peer in through the front of your computer and look at the binary bits inside were coming to an end. Shame in a way. This was the last Pdp-11 to have a console of this style. And they're lovely things, so it's a bit sad that they went. But I don't think anyone would argue that we should have consoles of that type on modern computers. So to run the kit, you select on the toggle switches the operating system you want to run, and you switch it on. And then you connect with a PC, and I'm using a laptop here running Linux. You connect using a utility called SSH, which I think is available for Windows and RISC OS as well, but I haven't tried those. And the connection's wireless, so it's very neat. And the laptop here is playing the part of a CRT monitor. I've put together some pre-recorded examples of programming. And the first one shows how to run a macro 11 assembly code program on RP11. So we're logged in here to the Pdp-11 using a Linux application called Putty, which can emulate a VT100 terminal. And there's a directory listing there on the screen that I asked for earlier in the session. And the dot at the bottom is a command prompt, and it's waiting for me to type in a command. So I've started by listing all the files that begin with hello dot. There's one which contains a very simple hello world program that I copied from Wikipedia. I can edit this. So the idea of a hello world program is that it's the smallest program you can imagine that produces a recognizable output. And it really doesn't matter what the output is. So I'm going to change it from hello world to hello rockers. And I can exit from this, saving modified file, and assemble it with the macro command and link it and run it. And there's the output, hello rockers. And normally there's more to it than that, of course, because usually you have errors in your program and you need to get an assembly listing and run a debugger to track those down. But that shows the basic edit, assemble, run part of the development cycle. The next example is running C programs on Unix. And this time I'm using a utility called CRT, which stands for Cool Retro Terminal, which emulates an amber screened CRT of the type that would have been used with the Pdp-11. So I think it's very appropriate. And again, we're partway through a session here, and I'm just going to use the Vi editor to edit a C program. And I'm going to change the number, the report frequency from 1,000,000 to 1,000. And then I can exit and save the file. And compile it. I'm going to direct the output of the compilation to a file called treesaw. It takes a few seconds. And then if I list the directory again, I can see that the new file is there with an asterisk alongside it to show that it's executable. I can run it by just typing its name, and now you can see what it does. It solves the board game Solitaire by searching for the solution. And every 1,000 moves, it's giving us a little progress report. That's the number that I changed, the report frequency from 1,000,000 to 1,000. It has to search over 3 million moves to find a solution, so it stops at 5,000. I think it takes well over an hour to complete normally. And a final demonstration is a bit of software archaeology. I couldn't help noticing that on the RT11 system disk there's a file called tweety.pic. You can see it listed on the top line there. So I'm just going to have a look inside it. There it is, a piece of ancient computer art. So that's the end of my slide. Just unshare my screen. Okay. So this is the machine that was driving all those demonstrations. It's running at the moment it's running Unix, but it's idling. And when it's idling, it just produces this scrolling pattern on the data display. And for those of you who spotted the odd key out, the white one, and are wondering what it does, it's the lamp test switch. You can run Pdp-11 software without building this. All you need to do is install SimH on your PC and get a disk image for RT11 or Unix or whatever you want. They're all freely available. So I suppose that invites the question, why build the kit? Well, I think the answer is very clear. It's because this brings the history alive in a manner that software emulation alone can't. This is something tangible. It's attractive, and I think it's really symbolic, because this is actually what a state-of-the-art computer looked like in the 1970s. I mentioned that the first machine I learned to program in assembly code was a Pdp-11 very like this, and that was in 1976. And of course, I didn't know how things were going to develop. It was beyond my imagination that I would ever own an immensely powerful computer like this. And, okay, it's not a powerful computer anymore by today's standards, but to me, it's a real pleasure to own one at last. And I thank Oscar for creating these very nice kits. So that's it. But before we go on to questions, I'd just like to take a moment to correct a mistake I made in my previous talk on the Pdp-8. This is a very simple machine with a small instruction set. And this is a more complex machine with a bigger instruction set. So I had the idea in my mind for a long time that it was reasonable to describe this as a RISC, reduced instruction set computer, and this is a CISC with complex instructions. Even though those terms were invented after these machines were made. But I recently read an article in Archive magazine on Arms and Architecture by Nicholas Cutler. And it made me wonder if I was correct about this. So I contacted Nicholas, and he checked the design specifications of these two machines. And he confirmed that this is a good approximation to a modern CISC, but the Pdp-8 is not a RISC. And the reason for that is that the term RISC refers to an architecture, and this machine does not have that architecture. So I'm grateful to Nicholas for clarifying that. What we can say about the Pdp-8 is it's a simple machine. It was a masterpiece of design in its day, but it's not a RISC. Okay, that's it.
Great. Thanks very much, Cliff. I've just got one question myself, which is the switches. I mean, it's a thing of beauty, I've got to say. I'm quite envious. But where the hell did those aren't off-the-shelf switches, are they?
Oh, no. Oscar, he's actually written quite a lot about how he developed these kits on his website. But it's quite a task. And he says it's not a money-making exercise. He does it because he wants to flood the world with obsolete computers, which I think is a fine motivation.
Yeah.
I can't think of a better reason. But yes, these switches, I think, are custom made. He's had them custom made in presumably quite large batches.
So is it the whole switch he's had fabricated, or is there an off-the-shelf underlying sort of naked switch there?
I don't know, but I assume it's the latter.
Yeah.
The standard switch that is has got a special top on it. But it's an amazing project to produce these.
They look like the switches you get on electronic organs.
I'm
Stop.
pretty sure
Well,
they may be a similar style, but I'm pretty sure these are unique for this kit. But yeah.
Didn't some of the earlier ones have 2 rows? Because I remember you could set up the address and you could peek and poke and things and single step.
Yeah.
I never worked on a 70 though.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. On the PDP-8, you could do that. You could single step, and you could see exactly what the program was doing because it's a simple machine, and the state of the lights on the front of the box define the state of the processor pretty much completely. So you could debug your programs quite easily on the front panel. I don't think you can do that with a Pdp-11. I certainly never managed to. And it's just because this is a more complex machine. It's got more registers, and if you wanted to see all the registers simultaneously, you'd need 7 rows just for that. So the idea of monitoring what a machine is doing through this sort of display, it just doesn't really work anymore as the machines get more complex. What they did use them for was hardware diagnostics, but they must have found another way to do that didn't involve all these switches and that, because later models didn't have these.
Someone's just popped up on chat saying, so the switches are just, what was it? I can't remember the exact quote. Are just for show then?
No, they work.
I'm not sure that's what was actually meant, but that's, oh goodness me.
Richard
The post office have a lot of those on equipment. Standard micro switches, not the key switches.
They're very nice quality, actually. They,
Sounds nice.
good feel to them.
Tactile.
Yes.
I hate soggy switches.
Yeah. And I like them because these are genuine toggle switches. So if you want a binary 1, you push them up, and if you want a binary 0, you push them down, which is quite very intuitive. On the PDP-8, on this model of PDP-8, only this one, I think, they were rocker switches, which I find rather odd because that's ambiguous then. There's no real obvious way to tell the difference between a 1 and a 0. You only have to use it for 5 minutes and you develop your own.
Ahead of its time, then. It was what they call fuzzy logic now, isn't it?
Yeah, or quantum switches. They can be 1s or 0s, who knows?
or both at the same time.
Both at the same time. I find that odd because not all PDP-8s had rocket switches. Some of them had toggle switches, so I don't know why they went that route for that particular model.
Perhaps they're working on the human-computer interface, as they call it.
Yeah.
Just a quickie question. Do you buy these with the Pi or separately? Or
no.
Options?
You need to, well, Oscar's website is very clear about what you get and what you don't get. You don't get the Pi.
Okay.
Or the SD card. And you don't get the cables that connect to the back panel. And I think that's because there are useful options. I put a Pi 3 in here, which I think seems to work really well. Mm-hmm. Some people might want to put a Pi 4 in.
Right, yeah. So what sort of prices do they come out at then, just as the box kit and your own computer? 100-ish?
I think we're talking somewhere in the region of £100, but don't quote me. Look at Oscar's site, because I would hate to get it wrong and put anybody off. That sort of level.
Yeah. Okay. And were the originals, I seem to remember seeing one when I was at university. I wasn't doing computer at the time. It was sort of like as part of the syllabus in electronic engineering. Did they have magnetic core memory?
Yes, they did.
Cross-point ferrules and things.
Right. Yeah, really, really intricate amazing that they ever got those to work, or that they ever found a way to make them.
Yes.
The 8 core ferrite memories and the early Pdp-11s did, and as well. And I think that's probably the reason why, when I showed this slide of the list of things that were improved in the Pdp-11, the actual amount of memory you can install was not that much greater. You could get 48K in the Pdp-8, 64 in the Pdp-11, and I think that was because they were using the same technology, and the real leaps in memory capacity didn't come until semiconductor memories took off.
Yeah, because you had the ICs for the processor, but not for the memory, didn't you?
Yes,
originally?
yes, that's right.
Yeah, originally core memory modules were hand built. Somebody actually had to thread all the things on.
And it's an incredible thing to think of that, yes.
Advanced crochet.
Both these machines, they evolved a lot from the first model through to the last. I mean, and the Pdp-11, the last models, the CPU was down to just a few chips. And I think there were some made under license after DEC stopped making them, were just one chip. So really enormous changes through the whole era.
One big advantage of core memory is that you could switch it off at night and go home and come in the morning and switch it on, and it was all the same.
That's right. That's right. It really did, and then we lost that ability for a while, didn't we? and then it came back with USB memory sticks.
Can you do anything for my memory?
Who are you?
Well, there you go. Yes. Are there any other questions for Cliff? Well, thanks very much, Cliff. That was excellent. Yeah, really interesting. I've always thought those Pdp-11s look just gorgeous. Definitely. Yes, look very nice on the shelf at that. Flickering away.
I think I call them James Bondish, wouldn't you?
Yes, very much so. So, next up, we've got Doug Webb. Are you there, Doug?
I am again.
Oh, hello.
I seem to have had technical problems, and so I disappeared for a while. But I thought Cliff's talk up until the point that everything crashed on my Windows laptop.
Bloody
so
computers,
was very interesting.
Oh dear.
So that's two technical issues tonight. Let's hope not for a third then. So I'm going to have a talk tonight about YTPlay by Ray Fisher, which enables you to look at YouTube videos on RISC OS. So what I'll do, I'll share my desktop. I'll just share my screen first and share that, hopefully. You should be able to see my screen there. I just need to. I'm going to try out VNC connection across to a Raspberry Pi for the demo. So hopefully that's going to work. Boot in the Raspberry Pi.
Is it running RISC OS?
Sorry?
Haven't just updated to the newest RISC OS server, have you? The 22? It doesn't work.
No, I've got 21.
21.
So
we need to get rid of the
before I came onto the ROCC meeting, I tried it all out, and it all seemed to work. So let's just see if it's connecting. It tells me it is. There we go. Okay. Hey. That looks rather slow. I like how that's building up that nice screen there. It certainly wasn't doing that earlier, so I just wonder whether this laptop's got a few more problems than I thought of. Okay, so there's the pointer. Little foible of VNC server is that it doesn't always capture the pointer first. So you'll, I think it's on most systems, you'll see a little dot. So just do a quick click and you should be okay. And rather helpfully, it hasn't saved all that I'd set up, but never mind. We shall go as we do. Right. Just make that display a bit better. You'll see the text in this.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so what you've actually got is there's two ways of installing YTPlay, a mainly manual installation of components and with some level of automation via Pacman. Is keen on Pacman, but it does have its advantages, and therefore, you know, I always find that's the best way. Has it sort of stopped at your end, or not? Because he seems to have stopped at my end anyway. So. What you will find is that with a mainly manual method, first off, go off to Rakefisher's web page, riscos.berlin/software, and then you can download a file called YTPlay_all, and that isn't what you think it is. It hasn't got every component that you require to install. It's has got YTPlay, and it's also got a companion light version now called YTPlay It, which is just minus some features like the search functions and all the other bits. So if I open this up, what you should see there is when you go there, you can download this zip file, and you'll see those two applications in it. So you can also download YTPlay from the store if you so wish. So that's one other way of doing it, and you can then install it wherever you want to. On this machine, I just happen to have it set up there. Okay, so again, you can get all these components, but the version, the manual version of installing by Pacman the components means that you've just got to go in manually install them all down yourself. So Python 3.8, Python pip, which is the install element, Python core, libff16, etc. And it'll install. What you've got to do is install all, make sure this is all on your machine. For the purpose of the demo, I use 5.28 as a standard install, just flash the new card. So it made it quite easy. So once you've got all those installed, you should have a tick, obviously, against them all. So if we come down to the likes of Python, a bit further down, you'll see a tick against them. So that means that they're all installed, and if you've got a U, obviously, in Pacman, there's updates available. So once you've installed those manually through Pacman, you can then go off and download from the same web page FFplay. Now, ROCC recommends the version that he's got on his website. I understand there's a reason behind that for some enhancements within it. So I guess that's the reason. I haven't actually tried it with the original version of FFplay or the one that you can get through Pacman. But that's certainly one way of going with things. So just bear with us. So again, you can manually install those once you've got them. And FFplay, it'll bring you a zip file. So you can either manually install it, FFplay, or when we talk about automation, what you can actually do is pull over that file to Pacman. And also, you then have to download FFmpeg and mplayer, and you do that from the RISC OS support site. And again, they're slightly enhanced versions of the applications that you've got within Pacman, and there are probably about 3 versions, I think, on the RISC OS supports website. But if you go for the one that has got EABI at the end of your web address, then that's the particular site. If I can get this up, I'll show you that. Right. Okay. What we can do, just move that slightly. As you can see, I had got all this set up until everything crashed. So you will see there mplayer 1.04 and FFmpeg 10.09.65. I hope that's not the date and year, but obviously that's the latest there. You can download those and again install them. The purposes of what I've done, I've installed within resources mplayer, so basically it's there from startup, and the other bits again, we've got you'll see Python will get installed within apps development if you've installed it correctly, and FFmpeg will get installed in audio or within apps. So once you've got all those, you can reboot your machine, and then you need to make sure that YouTube DL and YouTube search -Python are installed either manually or via executing the following commands. So let me just get to the next page. So just open up a task window, type in Python 3-m pip install YouTube -dl, and that will then run. and it'll take a little bit of a while to install, but you'll just be patient. And again, do exactly the same for YouTube search. ROCC in YTPlay has rather helpfully added in the ability to install YouTube DL or update it through the configuration section of YTPlay. With YTPlay on the icon bar, if you just select across the icon, you get up the configuration elements. So there we try it out. Let's just see. Why not be temp-based? We've had 2 problems tonight, so why not go for a third? So you think, oh, nothing's happening. So you just stand back and just wait, but eventually a task window will open up, as you can see, and it'll go off and download the latest version of YouTube DL. While it's doing that, it probably is worth mentioning where else you can do in YTPlay configuration. You can set the default player either to FF Play or M Player, and obviously set and save. You can change the default video mode. I've got an Apply 3 that this is on, and unfortunately it doesn't quite do 720p, which is mode 22. It'll do 18, and the Pi 4 does 22 okay, but the others don't. So you can set all that up from that particular configuration page. Going back here, you can see you've got the output of what's actually happened, collecting the YouTube DL information, downloading it, attempted to uninstall the original one. It's found the existing that I had, and now it's updated it to the latest one. So hopefully we've not messed up this installation. So there we go. Like I said, you've got 2 ways of installing that, manually or through the configuration. Now, once you've done all that, and again, you've got to install the YouTube search. There is a slight foible with the current YouTube search Python, in that you can't go above version 1.39. There's some path settings in the way that the files are organized that have been changed, and the RISC OS version of Python isn't quite up to distinguishing the pathways correctly. So ROCC kept it at 1.39. If you wish, you could actually go off to the YouTube search dash Python website and download those manually if you wanted to do it yourself as well. But being as they're here, and ROCC's put a nice easy way into installing them, I wouldn't recommend it unless you've got a particular reason to do so. So so what do you get? So if you click select on the icon, you're presented with a YT search screen. You can type some text in. It comes pre-set up to look at RISC OS, and you can list the page numbers. So it'll do 20 per page. So if you wanted to go to say there were 40 on instances on YouTube videos that have got RISC OS in the name, you could go off and go into page 2. So let's just run it. Don't you just love it? Not open, oh dear. That was good. Let's just try that again. Right. Does anyone spot my deliberate mistake there? I actually loaded the YTPlay that was in the zip file, not actually on the hard drive. So, yeah. So it's come back and it's given us quite a few here. Now this particular site, Explaining Computing, is quite good actually. The guy himself does some quite good things. Oh dear. Ah dear. Don't you just love it? I'm just going to try it once more. This was all working prior to everything crashing a bit earlier. Let's just try that.
It's that curse of the WROCC again.
It certainly is. Let's just try this again. Yeah. What's it actually saying? YTPlay. And, right. Don't you just love it? I'm just going to I just wonder whether there's a version of right, let's just try updating that again. I wonder if it's actually caused us a problem. Just wait for that to install. Like I said, it does seem to take quite a while, and you think everything's frozen. And so it's best just to give it a little bit of time. If this doesn't work, we'll try a reboot. We'll take it from there, I think. I think this is what you call waiting for the proverbial paint to dry, isn't it? Let's see if this works. Right. Appear to be. I've had it sort of struggling to work on an Ionix. Mm-hmm. So Pi 2 is fairly good. Like I said, ARMX6. I haven't tried it on a Panda board, aka ARMX, or a Beagle board. But if people want to try that, then I guess they can. I guess the issue being just like in the Pi, is it's an SD card, isn't it? Whereas the ARMX6 has got SSD.
Yeah.
And so that tends to work, a bit quicker.
Yeah.
And,
I think the Pi 4's got faster memory access anyway, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's I find the Pi 4 quite good. I've got a Pi 400 as well, which I haven't tried it on, but I assume that must be, fairly quick as well.
Would have thought, yeah.
So I guess the RComp Forte, RISC OS Bits, Fortress, and all those sort of machines should, particular Fortress, which is overclocked, I believe.
I think so. Yeah. Good. Thanks.
Doug, I'd just like to say thank you for that talk on the YouTube. It's been something I've been looking forward to find out how to do it properly.
Yeah. There was an issue. There was an earlier way of doing it, which was on RISC clarity, but that's been superseded by the way that ROCC set up YTPlay, the later versions from about 2.51, 2.52, because the latest version's 3.21. So I think Vince has altered the text on it to say that that's a time expired news article, because obviously it gives the wrong instructions for the latest version. That's the danger, I guess, of news sites. They're only as good as the time that they're actually published. So yeah, but thanks for asking me to come on to the meeting. It's always good to try out new things.
Yeah.
And
thanks for doing it, Doug.
And then, like I say, do the live demos and Death on Stage, I think it's called, isn't it?
Well, you're still alive. I think you've still got a pulse, haven't you?
Yes. How do we stop share on this thing?
You at the top of your screen, I think there's a green bit to click on.
Yeah, where it says you are.
Yeah, got it.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Just I think Ruth, I've made you host now, so you should have control.
Oh, I have an end button.
Yeah. The reason is, folks, I may have to duck out before too long because I've probably had about 90 minutes sleep last night, if that, and that was in little chunks. So
oh dear,
my eyelids are beginning to droop, and that's not Doug's fault or Cliff's. Okay, so it's you next, isn't it, Ruth?
Quite likely.
Oh heck! Well, there you go.
Right, a couple of little things to have a look at. It's really good, actually, Doug, that you brought that subject up. That there's work going on RISC OS video. That's really good to know. I think we can all agree that it's one of the things where RISC OS lags behind. Which brings me exactly onto the subject of when these when these Zoom meetings have finished, the Zoom software starts converting the recorded file from what I don't know, but it ends up being a what does it end up being? I can't remember now. My job then the next day or whenever is to top and tail it, hopefully get rid of any major bloopers, bad language, anything that we don't want to show. If anybody's shown anything on screen that could potentially be a breach of confidentiality or anything like that. And then make it available on YouTube. Now, obviously, that's something that I can't, sadly, do on RISC OS at the moment. It would be nice to think that maybe one day, in the not too distant future, something will come along to help us do that. In the meantime, obviously, I have to resort to PC World, to the dreaded Windows. And the software that I'm currently using is something called Reaper. And despite the fact that there are several free and open source video editing packages available, for example, there's one piece of software called Kden Live, which you may have heard of. It's available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. It's free open source software. It works quite well. The Linux people really do seem to like it. I've played with it on both Linux and on Windows. It is buggy. I have to say that it is buggy. Get a few random crashes for no apparent reason. And then the next time it fires up, it struggles to find all the linked video and audio files and things like that. So it works, but it's I'm not impressed. And particularly if you're trying to do things like crossfades from one scene to another, it can be very stuttery. Although it does have a facility built in which allows you to use what they call proxy clips. So basically low resolution copies of the video files. So it can show you on screen how the crossfade is going to look, but then when it renders that video out, it uses the proper full resolution clips. That helps a little bit, but not enormously, to be perfectly honest. And the audio tools, which is very strange. Kden Live has a lot of audio tools built into it, and I don't know whether it's just me or whether it's just the fact that the user interface in terms of the audio processing is absolutely appalling, and it's shall we say less than helpful. Doing the job that I do when I'm not doing other stuff, computery stuff, I spend a lot of time fiddling around with audio stuff, and I decided to invest in this software called Reaper, which is massively expensive. It's for a non-commercial stroke individual stroke small business. It's $60, which I think is pretty good. I mean, bearing it, if anybody's had any experience of using something like Pro Tools or Adobe Audition, something like that, anybody used any of those? Sorry, say that again. They're very good. They're very good bits of software. Pro Tools is sort of the industry standard in terms of digital audio workstations. But you're into hundreds of pounds, and especially with the Adobe software, which has now gone on an annual license fee principle, which I think is absolutely awful. But Reaper, $60, 50 quid ish, and it's rock solid. I haven't found anything yet that I've needed to do that it won't do. I haven't found anything that it won't do that the likes of Adobe Audition or Pro Tools would do. The user interface is a little bit odd, and I'll show you in a moment. Once you get used to it, once you get your head into their way of thinking, then it works very well. Video features. It is an audio workstation, but it's an audio workstation that can handle some video. I believe Pro Tools can, and I believe Adobe Audition can, but it's not what you would call video editing software, but it's good enough for my needs, certainly. If you want to do clever things like color correction, grading, any sort of, clever post-production work, probably not brilliant for that, but certainly for basic enhancements, control of brightness, contrast, crossfading from one scene to another, all that sort of stuff, a certain amount of manipulation, it's absolutely fine. Being an audio workstation rather than a video editing package, obviously the audio quality is superb, and it comes with a full range of stock VST plugins. VST, if you don't know, Virtual Studio Technology, it's basically means you can just add a plugin in that will add facility such as compression or equalization or reverb or all sorts of effects if you want that sort of thing. And of course, there's thousands, if not millions, of VST plugins that you can get either free or cheap that are out there. It takes practically any plugin. It says here, any third-party audio or MIDI plugin, VST, VST3, VSTi, LV2, LV2i, yeah, okay, quite a lot. So it's quite flexible. So what I shall do here, I'm going to move you over to my other screen, I think. So don't get dizzy while I move you. There you go. Sorry about that. So you should be seeing my pink Cyberman desktop at the moment. So I'm going to launch. This is it loads up pretty quickly as well. You've just seen that. So what we've actually got here is how many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tracks. And you think, why 8 tracks? Well, the video is on one track, so that track there is the video. That track there is the audio, and then the other things, we've got an intro. So if I drag, or if I put the cursor there, let me just check that you can hear the audio. Share sound. There we go. So as you see, I've got a bit of music that's been created by he who shall remain nameless. Thank you, Peter Richmond. And if I go back to viewing the video again, not only can we see the video, we can even do things like manipulating the size of the video, the pixelization effect that I've applied to it there, which you can see. And what is really nice is that if I just drag that down, if we look on these, this is the actual track with the video on. That's just a normal graphic that's just been placed in. I think it's in a PNG format graphic that's just been placed onto that timeline. And then the video processor has got, that's also applied to that track. We can control it by these control lanes here. So the opacity, for example, you can see if I bring that opacity down there, oops, come on, grab hold of the thing. I've got full control over the opacity at any point on the timeline, which is quite useful. So you can see I can turn that up or down there, and with this system here, I can turn that into a curve, or I can fade things in. So it's fading in as the pixelization, which is controlled by this timeline here, this control lane, I should say. I can make the pixelization, Let's see. I can make the pixels very big. And do all sorts of silly and wonderful stuff like that. Even on this third automation lane down here, if I zoom in on here, oops, let's put the carrot there. Let's zoom in. Oops. Dope. You can see that, if you can see that, it's a bit pale. I hope you can see that. Just around where the where my arrow's pointing now, there are some little control nodes that I can do silly things. Pull that up, control it. So when it does that little, I can do all sorts of silly things like that, and it's very simple to use. So once you get your head around that way of thinking, a lot of video editors, you know, you have to go into a separate window that you then have to specify start points and end points and all sorts of other things just to apply an effect to a particular part. And I think this way of using it, of controlling it via a control lane, is absolutely brilliant. If I just zoom out of there again, so there we've just got, as I say, it's just a PNG graphic that I inserted. And if you want the graphic to last longer, you just drag it out, you know, and it just repeats, which is what you want. Little audio clip up here.
ROCC, helping you with Acorn and RISC OS computing.
So that's VoiceOver Man, aka Peter. Available for bookings, weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs, and I'm the agent, so please get in touch. You know,
reasonable rates.
Very reasonable, very reasonable. And so you can see that you can build up the video that you want quite easily. I've even got on this track here titles. So if I come over here, you can see, if I just bring that up here a bit, just to get a bit bigger view. This was from the last meeting where we had Phil Pemberton, and I've got Phil Pemberton's name appearing there, but it fades in.
And do you want to mute everyone, Ruth, and then Phil can unmute himself?
And then fades out again at the end.
Yay. Excellent.
And again, that fading in and fading out controlled by the control lane there. So it's fully transparent, suddenly becomes opaque, stays opaque for a bit, suddenly becomes transparent again. The actual video is on this track down here. Let's just scroll up a little bit. So the video is on here. You can see just there's a little bit of a jump edit. Something went horrendously wrong, so I edited it out. So nobody will now know that things go wrong at ROCC meetings. It's top secret. And again there, what's also quite nice here is if we look at that, if we zoom in there, as you overlap one video clip with another, it automatically does a fade out of one and a fade in of the other, which is pretty nice. That's very useful. So you don't have to apply a crossfade. You literally just overlap the clips, and you'll get a crossfade applied to it. The audio, let's just zoom out here. So the audio is on this track here. Again, we've got automation added to it to fade it in at the right point. It stays at 0 dB all the way up there, and then right at the end, which is right up here somewhere. Let's just zoom in on that. The audio fades out right at the very end of the video, just as another piece of video fades in, which has got the logo again, which says thanks for watching. Again, just a normal PNG file, and a bit of music over the top. And that's your lot, the end. So that is basically all that's needed to take these Zoom meeting recordings and put them together, get rid of the rubbish, top and tail them, and get them ready for YouTube. Now, because it is principally an audio workstation, if we have a look on the, let's just bring that back here. If we have a look on the main audio channel, I've got some effects applied here. The little green button that says FX, don't you know? So if we have a look in there, we can see what effects I've got applied. There's actually quite a few effects applied, but only 3 of them are actually active. So if we look at one there, these are the free stock built-in VST plugins. So we get one called Recomp or ReaComp, and which is basically a compression algorithm, a compression. Well, it's a compressor. It's a compressor. So you'll see as
disk drives aren't made equal.
As I play that, you'll see the red bar coming down from the top of this. It's showing you how far that the compressor is pushing back on the voice to keep the dynamics within a certain range, so people don't get suddenly deafened if somebody starts shouting.
Some disk drives aren't made equal. We have some drives that's.
So I always set a bit of compression. It's not a massive amount. It's well, it is a large amount. It's 6.43 to 1 ratio, but that only kicks in once the actual input audio gets above this level here.
Disk drives aren't made equal. We have some drives that's.
So that works quite well. What I've also done, I've applied something called a clapping limiter, which don't use it on the Zoom videos. When I've been doing the live meeting videos, very often we get applause at the end. Well, we always get applause at the end because all our speakers are absolutely brilliant. And sometimes the applause can really come in and make everybody jump if you're listening to it. So all I've done there is I've set another limiter, which is actually the same limiter. It's just a different instantiation. Ooh, instantiate, yeah, whatever. Instantiate, yeah, whatever.
Some disk drives aren't made equal.
So you can see it's not touching anything there. But if people were suddenly starting to applaud, then it would just go above that level, that threshold level there, and then the compression ratio would be 88 to 1. So effectively it's a limiter. What else have we got on here? We've got a bit of equalization. So this is the built-in equalization utility plugin.
Some disk drives aren't made equal. We have some drives that.
So not only does it give you control over the equalization, it shows you a spectrum analysis live and on the fly, which is very nice.
Some disk drives aren't made equal. We have.
On most of these, I don't really need to do very much. Depending on different people's setups are different. Shall we say some people's microphones might not be as good as they should be. Some people's line might be dropping out a bit and you might get woolly sounds and things like that. And this can help quite a lot.
Some disk drives aren't made equal. We have some drives that's. We're working on methods for cleaning discs as well.
So you can filter out. What I usually do on vocals is start to roll things off below about 200 hertz anyway, because there's not much in the human voice below that frequency, so you might as well just get rid of it, and then you don't get any rumbles and things coming through.
Disk drives aren't made equal.
But you can do other things like boost the top end.
Some disk drives aren't made equal. We have some drives that do a better job than them.
But normally you don't need to do that sort of thing. But so again, sometimes it can be useful to just perhaps bring out the mid-range in people's voices, and
disk drives aren't made equal.
It can just add a little bit of presence or clarity to speech, which can be quite nice. Just for, as they say, schnitz and schniggles, I can add other things onto here as well. I could add, let's go full Dalek.
Disk drives aren't made equal.
I know, I'm a child. What can I say? So you can do nasty things.
Disk drives aren't made equal.
Let's see, what else can we do? We got pitch control. That's interesting.
Some disk drives aren't made equal. We have some drives that do a better job than others. But even then, we find that sometimes just reading at an analog level and doing software processing will get us data back. We're working on methods
for cleaning disks as well. The old method of taking the
So we can do things to disguise people's voices so the guilty can remain at large. That could be quite useful. We could add ridiculous amounts of reverb. And all this is free, so obviously I don't use this most of the time, but it's there and it's free, so why not? One of the very useful things is, I don't really think I can show you this now, unfortunately, but I've had a few videos recently where the audio quality has been, shall we say, less than ideal. Particularly the ones at our physical meetings, which are usually held on a Wednesday evening, which also coincides with the local campanologist practice sessions. So we get bells going, church bells ringing in the background, and believe it or not, there are some VST plugins that can be programmed with what you regard as noise, and it can subtract the noise from the actual program, and that works reasonably well. It's not brilliant, but it does help with if used in subtlety. It's with some subtlety. It's not too bad. So that is Reaper, and it would be lovely, wouldn't it, if I could do this sort of thing under RISC OS. But we live in hope. And that is Reaper. That's what we throw. That's what I use for throwing our videos together. Any questions so far? It's very quiet out there.
Going to get one from me. Was it H.264 that it started off as a video, or is it get converted to that? So many codecs, so little time.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. When I actually get it from, let me have a look. Actually, no. Actually, no. I don't know what it's originally recorded in by Zoom. It comes down to me eventually as an MP4.
Okay.
When I have finished editing whatever I'm editing on here, and then I come down to the file and render option here. Mm-hmm. The options that I can choose, again using FFmpeg, I send it out as WebM, which apparently is one of the recommended formats for YouTube.
And that's full HD res, isn't it?
It's going out 1920 by 1080, but 30 frames per second, which is perfectly adequate for ours.
We're not doing motorsport.
Yeah, indeed. The audio is 44.1K, sort of CD quality, but mono. There's no point in it being stereo. And let's see what options we've got. All the different audio formats as you'd expect, because it's principally an audio workstation. So WAV, FLAC, MP3, OGG Vorbis, OGG Opus. I don't know what that is.
That's a new one to me. Yeah.
And then video formats, and then we've got a choice here of AVI, QuickTime, MOV, MP4, MKV, and WebM. So you can do lots of things with it. The rendering rendering options are very, very, very good. You can even just put the render into a queue. So if you've got 3 or 4 different videos to render, rather than wait for one video to render before you get on and do the next one, you can just queue the renders, and then when you finish doing all the editing that you want to do, you can then just click the queued renders button there and tell it to just start going and go to bed. When you get up in the morning, they're all done. So that's principally it. Yeah.
How long does it take to do, if a meeting is an hour and a half, 2 hours, how long does that take to transcode?
I'll just come out of that. Oops.
4 or 5?
I'll stop sharing. It renders. I mean, obviously, it's going to be dependent on the speed of your computer. My PC is it's an i7 processor. It's about 3 gigahertz processor. 3.2, something like that. I've got 32 gig of RAM. I've got an M.2 hard drive in there, so it's a reasonably decent machine. Not brilliant, but it's not. It is nearly 5 years old. I know, poor thing's an antique. And it renders at 0.4 times actual speed. So an hour would take roughly an hour and a half to render.
That's not too bad.
So an hour's audio, it renders. Sometimes it renders so quickly that you don't even know it's done.
Oh, exactly. Video is always a thing that tests your system. I know when I was working in training, we had the first digital system we got, you left it overnight to burn a DVD. And they would say, failed, try again. So,
I remember
video is always the one that tests your system. And I think for other people as well, you were showing those audio effects. Once upon a time, each of those would be a box at 200 quid each.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So you've already gone through like 1,000 quid worth of stuff, just in a bit of tweaking and bits and bobs. So I think the nearest thing we got, and I think it's when we went to RISC OS 4, it all changed. I'm trying to remember who run the system. It was Studio Sound and Pro Sound. You could get a limited reverb and some bass and treble, and I think up to 24 audio tracks. I'm trying to remember who did it. Can't remember off the top of my head. And RISC OS 4 nobbled it, basically. So it never went past that point. But it nearly got there once. So I think you can still use the editing ones. I can't remember if it's Studio Sound or Pro Sound. It was Oregon that did it. So I think I have been able to.
There is a 32.
Yes.
Sorry, Pete. I was going to interject. There is a 32-bit version of Studio Sound that's available. And equally for Pro Sound that works certainly on ARM X6 anyway.
Right.
So I guess what would be the last video suite? Would that be the replay suite for RISC OS, I guess?
It depends how you looked at video suite, because I went out and bought and never really used to get my money back. The one from Earlham Instruments, where it had MJPEG boards, and it had a fast SCSI drive via DMA. The thing I loved about that, the whole video editing, I think came on 3 floppy disks originally, because the hardware was doing so much, you know. But basically, you were getting crossfades, audio fades. I don't know if you had bass and treble, but you could definitely do superimposition of graphics. In fact, they said you could have, like, this is one of the more expensive gen locks going, apart from the professional ones. And I've still got that system lurking around in one of my many RISC PCs. But again, I think that was 3.7 and broke on 4. Nearly everything audio-visual broke on 4. MIDI kept working, but I think nearly everything audio-visual, something happened. I know there was a special ROM you could get, 4.06, I think, and that allowed people to use millipede boards and lots of things that were video related.
Blimey, that's the best from the past, isn't it? The millipede board.
Yeah. I believe they're all, I don't know if they're in the Museum of Computing History now, but I know a whole set of boards from commercial TV, well, BBC, IBA, whatever, were using the Apex boards, the millipede ones, and did millions of game shows, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think it was in one of the issues of Archive, maybe a couple of years ago, that was in the news that someone had sort of rescued all these from being thrown in the BBC bin, you know. So, yeah. But there we go.
Yeah, I think going back to that studio sound, I think that was made open source, and I think there's a version 2.09 in December 2016. So we've been doing some work on it up until at least 2016 anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it was quite easy to use because it was a bit like Reaper there in a very simplistic form. You could drag things and change things, so you could fade in and out quite easily and what have you, and just slide your samples along. And I think it understood a lot of different sample formats as well, so you could mix. It didn't all have to be, you know, 44.1 kilohertz stereo WAVs. It could be anything going, and it just worked it out, which was the nice bit, because you could just really throw anything at it. Yeah, it's quite good, that. As they say, we live in hope.
Fingers crossed.
Get the other 3 cores on the Pi going. That'll do video editing, won't it? There, I know that's something they're working on.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you can offline things in the background. That'd be absolutely great for a load of stuff.
Indeed.
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, going back to my presentation, I have done some debugging while we're on, and I think I found the reason why I had problems. It was because I put mplayer into boot resources, and it obviously wasn't being seen consistently. So I've moved it into apps video, and every single time I've just done it 4 times. So yeah, there we go.
You live and learn, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it must be due to the location.
Yeah. Thanks. That's really useful.
Fair enough. Any other questions, comments, slagging off, anything before we move on? Right, in that case, the next thing was much of a discussion starter as anything else, not so much a talk. And that is, I'm going to share my screen again. All being well. I don't know why it's doing that. It's only done that in the last couple of weeks. I'll find out one day, I'm sure. I'm currently using RISC OS under RPCMU. I have been using it on a Pi 3, which has been quite entertaining. I've just ordered up a Pi 4, and I'll just momentarily stop sharing. Oh, no, I won't, because it means I can't access my mouse while this is. No, never mind. Go. So, yeah, I've ordered up a Raspberry Pi 4. I thought it would be nice to actually have another machine that I can use exclusively for running RISC OS on. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I might want to put it in a case. Currently, I've got a RISC, a Pi 3. If you can see me in the little window, which is, oops, hang on, bring it back here. Yeah, I've got, I've got a Lego box, which has got a Raspberry Pi 3 inside it. I've still got a lot more Lego in my box up there, but I thought I would actually invest in something half decent. So I had a word with Andy at RISC OS Bits, and I said, if I send you a design, you know, can you etch it onto one of these boxes? He said, absolutely, yeah, no problem. Send me the design. So that was brilliant. And the design I decided to come up with is look at this. I just want to show you that this bit down here. It says info. Look at that, a fully licensed copy. It is licensed. Anyway, so this was the design. So for those of you who know me well, or don't know me well, I'm a Doctor Who nut. And I decided that it would be nice to have something with these sort of Gallifreyan symbols on. Space-time coordinates, if you like. And I got some ideas off various websites, and I thought, oh, it should be easy enough to knock up in Artworks. And one of the things that I immediately fell at the first hurdle, as they say, was this sort of shape. Let's just undo those. So we've got this circle with a byte taken out of it. And I thought, well, that's easy, isn't it? Because all you need is essentially, oops, wrong one, that one, thank you, is make a circle, make another circle, select them both, stop moving it around, and then you do, what is it, lines, shapes, intersect with top. No, that's not quite right. So we'll undo that. So we'll say lines, shapes, intersect all. Is that the one? No, that's not doing it. And this sort of surprised me because for many years I've been using Xara on the PC, which, as we all know, is a direct descendant of Artworks. And doing that was very easy, to create a shape, put another shape over the top and subtract the second shape from the first shape. Worked perfectly in Xara. And when I tried to do it in Artworks, it wouldn't work. Well, I couldn't use Xara because the version of Xara I've got is stop that, I hate that. It's Xara X1. And it dates back quite a while. In fact, it runs, shall I tell you, it runs perfectly well under Windows XP. So it is getting on a bit. And it worked because I was working at the university at the time. And so I got them to buy me a copy of Xara. And when we changed up to Windows 7, Xara carried on working. So it was fine, no problems at all. And now we're on Windows 10, and Xara really doesn't like it. It won't even install. So that's why I decided, oh, it's all right, no problem. I can use Artworks instead, and I can't. It doesn't do quite what I want it to do. And as you can see in this sort of design, it's sort of fairly fundamental. Unless anybody else knows the trick to get one shape subtracted from another.
There is an easy way, is you draw another box over the top and then intersect.
Draw another box over the top.
Richard Ashbury would know, I'm sure. But he's left the meeting.
No.
Ruth actually told me about this one, but I've not had time to have a look at it. It may be something you can do in Draw.
Well, if
Maybe
you draw,
it has to be Draw Plus or Vector or something.
if you draw a rectangle now that sits over the top of both of those,
as in an actual rectangle.
Rectangle, yeah.
Over the top of both.
Yeah. And then try that. I can't remember whether you make them a shape first, but I think you try that. I've not done it for quite some time.
Does the how-to that I linked to on our website help? Because that seems to have exactly the shapes you're looking for already on the graphics.
Sorry, say again.
The link I put in the chat, which is one of the how-to articles on the club website, actually has pretty much exactly the shape you're looking for in amongst the examples. So it might...
That's interesting. I haven't seen that. Right.
That's something Richard came up with many years ago, I think.
Is that a Blue Peter moment, Steve? Here's one made earlier.
I think this is part of the catch, isn't it? Almost why there should be a user group for things you didn't know you could do, or weirder ways that don't make any sense but work, you know.
So lines, shapes, let's try that. Intersect all. Yeah, still doing that. Okay.
The way I would do that is sort of what Gareth was suggesting, but I'd draw the rectangle so that it's a filled rectangle, but to the background color, and I overlay it over the circle on the right, so it's lined up perfectly with the edge where they join.
Yes.
So, shall I go and buy Xara?
That's another solution. I use Xara all the time.
Well, this is yes. So I ended up downloading the. I can come out of here now, can't I? So just bear with 1 sec. I know you're all going to groan. So yes, I downloaded the trial version of Xara, which is come along, you can do it. Oops, start trial version. If you register for it, you get 30 days of free Xara goodness. So that's what I ended up creating in Xara. In fact, actually, I tell a lie. I originally created it in Inkscape. I did try it in Xara. And Xara would do all sorts of wonderful things. One thing it wouldn't do was this spiral. I'm sure there's a facility in there somewhere. You see that spiral there that's moving around? Where I'm moving the cursor. But Inkscape does that very well. So I made this in Inkscape. And then sent this on to Andy at RISC OS Bits, who because he'd said to send it me as a vector, so it went out as an SVG, scalable vector graphics, and he promptly said, "Have you got a Xara version?" So I was rather hoping Andy was going to join us this evening. I would have asked him what the issue was with the SVG, but anyway, he asked for the Xara version, so that was fine. So I basically just took this SVG file and dropped it into Xara, and then exported it as a Xara file and sent it straight on to Andy. And he's got back to me within a day. I've got to give an absolute shout out to RISC OS Bits for that, because he sent me back. Within a couple of hours, he sent me back a test engraving just to see if the quality was what I was looking for. And I said, yeah, that's fantastic. And he... I
think thumping away on a keyboard. So
it was Vince. I've just muted him. Sorry, Vince.
Right,
Yeah, Andy got back to me within a couple of hours and said, "This is the lid. What do you think of that?" I thought that was absolutely bloody fantastic. The holes, I didn't define them as holes, but he did ask me, do I want some holes putting in for extra ventilation for the Pi 4, because apparently they do get a bit warm. So I said, yeah, that would be a good idea. So he's obviously used a bit of artistic license and taken what were solid blobs and drilled them out as separate holes, which is really good. Now, I mean, I love that, and I can't wait for it to arrive. Should be with me by the weekend. So that's that. It's in TARDIS blue, of course. Is there any other colour? Has anyone noticed any Easter eggs in that design? Come on, all you Whovians and Trekkers.
It looks a bit like the Antikythera mechanism they dragged out from that Greek ship at the bottom of the Aegean
Of course,
Sea.
yeah. It's not obviously not based on that, but obviously the ancient Greeks were obviously Time Lords that we just didn't know about. So.
Absolutely.
There's a message in the chat there about Star Trek logo somewhere.
If you look down there, there's a Starfleet emblem.
Starfleet, yeah.
And if we go over here, you actually see.
Remind me of the headdresses that the formal Time Lord wear.
Well, of course, that sort of whole design ethic is used, isn't it, throughout the whole of the that sort of shape.
Where the Phillips screw head is, there's an interior view of a slinky. Remember those things?
TARDIS there.
Yeah, TARDIS there.
There's a TARDIS there, which I dropped in. I'm amazed at the quality of this. Bearing in mind, this is only 5 or 6 inches in diameter, and that's why he did a test engraving first, just to see if the quality was good enough, and it looks brilliant. So I'm really looking forward to getting that, hopefully by the weekend. These little speckles are just dust left over from the engraving. So I'm really pleased with that. So the thing is, for doing things like this in future, I did go on to, I can stop sharing now. I did go on to Martin Werthner's website to have a look and see if it was worth upgrading my version of Artworks to the latest version, but I couldn't find out from the website whether the latest version of Artworks would still do what I wanted it to do. Knowing that Xara does what I want it to do, and if I ever do things like this again, and I probably will at some point, and when you consider the other things that Xara can do, it really does beg a massive question there. How to above is referencing some documents. Okay. The update to it would cost me about £100 to update my version of Artworks to the latest version. For £45 or £44.99, I can buy Xara, which is sort of a shame, really. If I just go back to sharing screen again, you should be able to see a Xara window now. Yeah, you can select things. Let's select that. Group that. Apply 3D, and then do things like that, which I think is bloody nifty. And I'm absolutely certain, as much as I love Artworks, as much as I like Martin Werthner, as much as I would love to support RISC OS developments in the lowercase way, not the company name, being able to do things like that with Xara going to be so amazing. So my my quandary is to spend £99 updating artworks to whichever version it is, bearing in mind it hasn't been updated for 4 years, something like that, according to the website.
That's due to a youngster appearing, possibly.
So I understand. Yeah. Oh, that's the that's the Starfleet logo.
Yeah. Having said that, I think Xara is ridiculously cheap for what it does do. I don't think there's a direct equivalent on any platform.
No,
really.
I'll be honest. I was pleasantly surprised when I went to have a look, because Xara seems to be going the way, or the company Magix anyway, seems to be going the way of companies like Adobe and wanting you to sign up for ongoing licensing agreements. I know.
No.
I know.
Ruth, when they changed to that ghastly grey colour scheme, I absolutely hate it, and it's not good for my eyesight either. I don't know who thought that was nice.
Do you mean on the website?
No, the actual Xara window.
Oh,
they suddenly changed from one version to another. This dreadful greyness. I think it's depressing.
It might even be an option. A lot of software has this thing called dark mode now, don't they? But
which I detest. I think it's called something like, was it Photo and Something Designer now?
That's right. Yeah.
Xara Photo and Graphic Designer.
That's the one.
I've got a latest version new, but it's nowhere near the latest one.
Yeah, I think it works on bitmaps as well, doesn't it, Ruth?
Yes.
That's the main difference.
It does some things with bitmaps, yeah. And the photo editing is probably as good as you'll get in, at least as good as what you get in GIMP or something like that.
Yeah, so it's really about 3 programs in one, isn't it? But a very cheap price.
Yeah. So okay, so we've got that. So let's let's create a new one. So right, let's go through this process then.
Okay. So draw your first circle.
Actually, do you want to take control of the screen?
I can't because I've not got
okay,
a VNC set up, so I can't.
Not a problem. Okay. So
and now we see the potential for complete cock-ups in public.
Okay, so I've drawn a circle.
So if you make that an unfilled colour, so if you just click on the transparent, that's easier to see. So draw your second circle where you need to intersect. Okay, now go for your rectangle tool and draw a rectangle that encompasses everything of those 2 circles. Okay. Then go to your select tool, the arrow, select everything and do a Control-I, which is, I think, make shapes, join shapes.
Control-I.
Yeah, or you can.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that joins them all together, so it's one shape. Okay, then if you do another rectangle round the whole lot.
Running out of rectangles here.
Yeah, so slightly bigger. That's it. Okay, then select them all again. So you drag a box around everything, and then it's intersect with top.
Intersect with top. That wasn't there before.
Okay, now it's still one shape. So what you have to do is break the shape. So if you come down, it's either a Control-L or off the menu, it's break shapes.
Break shapes.
Okay, now you can select the parts you want.
Ah. Well, that's weird and wonderful.
It is doable, but it's a little bit messy.
It's not very intuitive.
No.
It's not. Yeah. It's not obvious, is it? Let's try and select that.
But this is one of these things. I mean, is that actually a manual guide thing, or is it something you've worked out yourself?
I can't remember, to be honest. It's so long. I've been using it for professional artwork jobs since I don't know, about '94. I think I moved over to RISC OS, so that'll work.
Martin Vertner with all the intersections, etc.
For what it's worth, the reason I was banging the keyboard earlier was because I was loading RPC on my Linux machine, which unfortunately I have to do it from the command line for some reason. But just very quickly, I used the method that I suggested to do it in Draw.
Right.
If I share my screen with you, I can actually show you what I've created, just a very rough one.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Where the hell's the share screen on this one? I've got 2 screens running now. Should be down there somewhere, shouldn't it? Yeah, there it is. It was off the bottom of the screen. Right, can you see that?
Yep.
And there it is. That's just 3 shapes. It's just a combination. If I can get my mouse over onto the right screen now. It's a combination of a big circle, a smaller circle, which I can't select now. There it is, the smaller circle, and a fully filled rectangle blocking part of that one off.
Now, you see, that's my way of thinking. When Ruth gave me this as a thing to do,
yeah, but that wouldn't work.
In my head. I just didn't have time to do it.
But that wouldn't work on an engraving machine because it's not one path.
No, this is true. This is true.
Yeah.
So what you want is an outline path for the machine to follow. So that'll confuse it, I think.
I'm pretty sure that in Xara, in some old versions of Xara anyway, I used to do it that way because there was a way of actually converting that to a path.
Yeah.
There was a program that would join all the bits together, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the other thing I was thinking is if you draw the arc of a circle.
Where's all my windows gone? I'm trying to unshare the screen again now. What's happened here?
Oh yes, draw lots. We've just got from Steve Fryatt there to do the spiral, Ruth.
Rosemary Miskin's draw lots.
Because I'd thought of draw basic while we're going along. I'm sure I've seen that in that once. But it's a matter of brain power versus time versus money, I think.
Isn't it just?
I'll show you Martin Vertner's tutorial on how to do it.
All right.
Share screen. This is 1996, as you can see. Well, let's see what I've got here. I'm not going to go through it, but it does. That's page 7. But this page up. Does union of shapes, pattern filling, matching text.
I think it sort of makes you realise how many things you can actually do, and then the awkward corners of the world, isn't it?
That's right. I think a lot of it's excuse me. It's understanding the sort of the logic behind some of these tools. I suppose with a lot of modern software, we've got used to having a button that you press that does the job that you want it to do, rather than having to think in terms of combining different options in a sequence.
I use Xara quite a lot, and I found Xara does this, but Artworks does everything that Xara does, but in a much more mathematical way, and much more complicated, but it has all the function. That's the intersectional one. We've got,
yeah, I think the answer is watch only Connect and then go and attack a graphics program.
These are the other set operations.
Yeah.
Break shapes, intersection. Okay.
Which version of Artworks is this talking about, though?
1996. This file is dated.
Right.
So pretty early. It's an Artworks file. No, sorry, it is 1997, version 1.01.
Oh, blimey! Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
So you don't need.
That's the.
I suspect that's the version of the file rather than the version of Artworks.
Possibly, yeah.
This is the intersect tool. So this is a special tool that
No,
Martin.
it's the same one. It's the same thing. There is actually no tool on the toolbar. It's all done through the through the menus or.
When Martin took over actually developing Artworks, a lot of his tools that he'd sold separately beforehand got merged into the software. So it's almost certainly the tools that are in the menu now were sold as add-ons by Martin.
Yeah, I seem to remember seeing add-ons. Yeah, I think Intersect was one of the first ones I saw. Yeah.
I might have a look for those manuals and see if I can have a read through them.
This is called Intersect Tut. Intersect Tut. Intersect Tut.
There you are. Yeah.
It's a 9-page Artworks document.
Mm.
I think it's around on Martin's website.
Mm-hmm.
I shall go hunting.
I'll stop sharing.
But this is also the catch, isn't it? Of how much you didn't think you knew, and then you find out how many other people don't know all those things you didn't think you knew. Which is part of the user group, isn't it, really?
It's exactly. I was literally, you're taking the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say that's what user groups are for, isn't it? So it's wonderful. Yeah.
So for the next meeting, can we produce things you didn't know you could do with programs that you do all the time?
Artworks versus Xara. I used Xara at work for years, and I never knew which I preferred. I mean, Xara has definitely got much better text functions. You can use the word processor, but in terms of an actual drawing tool, I think Artworks beats it. It's just a nicer thing to use.
Well, I love the simplicity of it. In fact, I use it. One of my other little jobs, I teach IT technology to a group of, shall we say, silver surfers who, mostly ladies who haven't been involved with, haven't used computers most of their lives, obviously. And I actually used Artworks last week to demonstrate to them the concept of vector artwork, and they were very, very impressed. So when I told them that they could get this software called Inkscape for free and have a play with it, they were absolutely wonderful. My inbox was getting flooded with pictures of daisies and little sort of childlike houses and with smoke coming out the chimneys and stuff like that. So it was brilliant to see. Yeah, I said at the time, if they just do me a stick man, I will be happy because they'll have learned something and put it into action. And they did. I got 2 or 3. I got 2 or 3 nice little pictures. All clean.
Good.
Did anyone see on the mailing or the rule forum my little thing about my problems with draw on the Pi 4? Every time most things when I try and save, it says it crashes, unrecoverable internal error, floating point exception, invalid operation, must exit immediately. And nobody can seem to tell me why.
Ouch.
This is 528, presumably.
Yeah.
It's running on the 4. Yeah.
Is anybody actually using draw on 528?
Yeah, got
Or
it
does it
here.
just sit there and do nothing?
Yes.
Yeah, got it here.
No problems.
Send us one of the files, Chris, and I'll try it. But I'm just drawing something now.
I think it's the program, not the files, because every file I tried, I get the same problem.
Yeah, so because draw's in ROM.
Yeah, draw works okay.
This isn't right. Have you got a number of programs that boot up?
Well, yeah.
At the same time.
Well, no, I don't load draw at the beginning. I only. Well, it's in app, so I suppose it's seen, isn't it?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if you've got a lot of programs that you load up at startup,
well,
automatically.
A few things like printers and organizer and CPU clock and top 10 and strong head. There's not that many.
Isn't 5.28 the version that has got a problem if you have more than 143 modules loaded?
I don't think I got that.
No, it's 143 total.
That screen or
it's 100 something total, not a it's 100 something total. Not the programs you've just loaded. It's absolutely everything. So everything that's in the ROM.
Exactly. It's 143 modules that are loaded on your system at that time.
The workaround is to go into configure and select a specific video mode. So instead of leaving everything at auto, set something so that it isn't set to auto. So you might say choose what would be a good one? Configure monitor type 4, for example, which would force it to use a Super VGA monitor at startup.
Right.
Now,
why does draw use floating point though? It's a bit odd, doesn't it?
Don't know. No, I think it's just that. Yeah, the whoever was writing draw at the time wanted to do something, and there was floating point available, so why not use it?
Right.
But no, I think the issue is that it could be that draw is the first thing that tries to invoke the floating point emulator, and the attempt to use the floating point emulator takes you over the magic the number of modules.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think setting doing something like I think it's configure monitor type 4 would force a VGA Super VGA at startup. That's probably the best way.
Or wasn't it something like configure WIMP mode 28 at startup?
Where do I
do that?
I didn't want to play around with configure WIMP mode because, of course, that then tries to change the desktop resolution, which could leave you in a slightly awkward situation. Monitor type's probably slightly safer to play with because that really only is dealt with at boot, and once you're into the rest of it, it should the WIMP graphics system should take over.
Do I change the Do I change it from the monitor icon and choose another display?
No, it's from the command line. Configure monitor type 4.
Oh right. It's a bit of a pain every time you want to use draw.
No,
you only do it once.
You do it once, and then it's set, and it just carries on working.
All right.
On.
Yeah.
You probably will have to reboot.
So what do I type?
Configure monitor type. So that's monitor type.
Can I go for a task window?
Task window is fine. Yes.
Yeah. Start configure.
Yeah. Monitor type. That's all one word.
Space monitor type.
Yeah, and then 4.
Space 4 or just 4?
Space 4.
Right.
Just
Start configure monitor type 4.
Yes.
Press return, nothing seemed to happen, so I just do a restart, right?
Do a restart now, yes.
Right, okay. I'll get back to you when I've checked. I've got nothing open, should be.
So this has been found out post release of 5.28, presumably. Yes.
Yes. It is actually fixed in 5.29.
Oh, right.
If you've got a recent 5.29 build, the problem has been fixed. But the workaround for 528 is to force a specific monitor or screen mode type.
Yeah, it's not a great shake. It's annoying, really, isn't it? I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was my YTPlay problem then. Yeah, it could have been, couldn't it? Perhaps. Yeah. Perhaps moving M player to to slightly different load position.
Yeah. The thing is, no. If you're running YTPlay, you're loading lots and lots of programs. So on a typical Raspberry Pi, you're only something like 12 to 15 programs away from hitting the limit anyway. So if you were listing lots and lots of things to load to get YTPlay to work, so I would have expected that to run into the problem every time.
Yeah. Well, I've got VNC server running, and then as we went through the demo, I loaded certain other things in. So perhaps it was that then. Yeah.
It's modules, not software, so it's not all programs.
Yeah. It's a module. Yeah, exactly, Steve. It's the modules that are loaded via the software. Yeah.
I find this very reassuring that these things are still, being discovered and put right. I think it's absolutely wonderful.
Right, I've restarted, made a little draw file, did some things, and saved it a couple of times, and no glitch so far. Fingers crossed.
Oh, good.
There you go.
It's early days yet, though. It's early days.
Just write that down on a piece of paper.
Well, you didn't actually ask us what our hourly rates were. So what's your hourly rate then, Stuart?
It's a pint of beer when the pub's open outdoors, probably.
Oh, please. Yeah, if only.
Monday, I think it's probably get your raincoat and a snow shovel. That's an imagine. I'm going to wait for a nice day.
It saves you going back to the bar for ice, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I'll just chip some off my beard.
Do we have any Python experts on tonight?
Python? Not me, no.
Pip. But I'll share my screen. It's very, very quick to show. Let's have a look. If I just get up a task window. And I've got this, I've prepared this command earlier, so I'm going to press the up arrow. Right, if I try Python 3, I'm trying to install matplotlib. It's a library for doing plotting. I've just found it on YouTube and I wanted to try it. And if I press enter, it thinks for a bit. Quite a bit. Talk among yourselves. What I tend to do with when I'm running Python is, it's actually done something now. I always have this little task thing going when I'm running Unix lib type stuff. It tells me that something's actually happening.
Yeah, it's nice to know.
This is, you can see I've done this before, so it's using a cached version of matplotlib. It's found it all right. 37 megabytes. I guess it's unpacking that. I'm using this on a MX6, which is a pretty slow machine these days. It gets a bit further than this. The tension's mounting.
You're not on 5.28 there, are you, John? Either.
What, Pi?
on your system.
It's Python 3.8, yes, 3.88, I think.
No, I meant RISC-OS 5.28.
No, 5.29, I think.
Yeah.
RISC-OS 5.29.
Ah.
I think it's one that Andrew sent. I don't know if Andrew sent it out or I got it myself. I don't remember. There we go. Right, now let's make this a bit bigger. That's better. Right. I'll just make it bigger still so you can read more. And right down at the bottom, module not found error, no module named package resources. Now, package resources is part of setup tools. So I can't see why it's missing.
Yeah, this isn't a path set type issue that I was mentioning before, was it, John? Because Chris did say that there's certain things that Python doesn't quite get right, so it doesn't quite get some of the paths.
Well, look at this line here. It's trying to find boot resources, Python site, Python 3.8 site packages, set up Python tools, version.py. It found that. And at line 1 in that program, it tries to import package resources. Now, it should know its paths by then. You've seen that, so I'll close that.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that the way, because it's a converted package, Python is. Chris said that it doesn't always get the nuances between a Unix pathway and a RISC-OS pathway correct, and so it causes issues. I can't quite get Pygames to work, and I get the same sort of error that you've got.
So I thought you meant it should be .py, not /py.
No, it does its own conversion, but I think there's some, like I said, I think it's one to ask Chris, because certainly it's got some funny little bits that it doesn't quite catch all and translate all of the pathways correctly. I certainly noticed that.
I think part of the problem, if I remember rightly, was that if any Python code tries to do its own file name manipulation and just assumes that / is a directory separator and dot is the extension, it'll go horribly wrong on RISC OS because we use them the other way around. So Python can convert anything that does it kind of through Python, but anything that tries to do its own manipulation won't work, basically.
Well, see, I don't know, but that's the line that's going wrong. There's no path or anything involved in that. Import package resources. And it says doesn't exist. So I just wonder, and I've looked on the internet, there's lots of people who've had the problem, nothing to do with RISC-OS, and they say reinstall setup tools. Now, of course, you reinstall setup tools and it doesn't make any difference, does it? Okay, I'll ask Chris if he's got any ideas. I'm a bit stuck with it.
Yeah. Well, if you get an answer, great, because I've got a problem. I can't actually run some of the Pygames that Chris says that work. I've tried it on 3 machines now, but hey ho.
Well, I'm writing,
and I did mean to drop him a line.
I'm writing a user guide, and I'm making sure that everything in it works. And basically, I'm documenting what I'm doing. If it doesn't work, I'm fixing it. But the user guide's taking a long time to write. I've been stuck on I'm trying to use strong headers as a development tool, and the strong head Python mode isn't up to date. I've been corresponding with Fred and finding bugs in the Python mode. The last one yesterday, I hope it's the last, and I hope it's going to release the new Python mode for Python 3. At the moment, if you do if you go to the Stronghead modes site and download the Python mode, it's the old Python 2.7, 2.8. I think it's now produced the Python 3 one I've got, but it has a few bugs, so I guess you'll release it. I'm documenting, I'm saying, so I'm trying to say in my guide, download Python mode from the modes database and install it. Now, if you do that, it doesn't work because up there on the modes database, it's Python 2.7. So it's a slow business.
Yeah. Just going back to YTPlay again, I've just done what we were talking about with Stuart and Chris. I've just configured this Raspberry Pi that was 5.28 with configure monitor type 4, reboot, moved MPlayer back into boot resources, loaded it back up, and it works. So it probably was the 143 module issue on 5.28 that was causing my issues earlier on.
Just a question then, when we get a version of 5 that doesn't need monitor type 4, what do I need to do to undo what I've done? What's the normal monitor type?
Auto, isn't it?
Monitor type auto would do it, yes.
Oh, right.
Auto.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Anybody read the thread on the forums recently about the size of text in command line mode? Worth a read, fascinating stuff. It's about sort of 10 or 15 notes. And I learned quite a lot on that thread. Dave Rupp putting stuff in. I've been annoyed by having the command line text too small when you just press F12. It's just with a big screen, it's minute. With a couple of magic key presses, you can, which basically are doing VDUs and changing the modes. I think it was Control V followed by a spacebar, followed by F12, F12, and it's all it all comes up much bigger.
I'm saying nothing about us getting older and needing bigger screens.
It's not bigger screens, it's larger text.
Larger text, yeah. It was,
when I remote into someone's machine when I'm doing IT work and they have huge monitors, but when I'm remoting through, it's having to display it on my normal monitor and the text is all minute.
Right. Chris Hughes is leaving us. See, just some people just don't have that staying power, do they? I don't know. Night, Chris.
I've got a week soon.
Is Vince Hudd going off to join a riot, being in Bristol?
No, he isn't.
Riff Raff.
Right. Well, in the absence of anything more RISC OS going on, then is Rick still with us? Are we? Rick is still with us. Well, he's according to this, he's still with us. He's probably gone to bed. So
yeah, it's on your bike.
Okie dokie. I think we probably should call it a night then, if that's okay with everyone.
Is Cliff still on? Is
Sorry,
Cliff still on?
Chris?
Cliff Hatch. Is Cliff Hatch still on?
Yep.
Yeah. Just a quick question. Where did you get your copy of Pdp-11 VI from? I've been trying to track it down for some time.
Oh, it was just on on the Unix disk. It's Unix 2.11 BSD from the link on Oscar Vermeulen's website.
So on Oscar's site, great. I'll track it down from there.
Well, actually, if you follow his instructions to download all the software for the Pdp-11, there is an image for a Unix disk that does have that on it.
Yeah. So I keep having to write my text in Windows and then import it into Pdp-11 and then export it back out again. And I won't be able to edit while I'm inside.
I've been reading the forum about that issue, and some people prefer to do that anyway.
For big things, yes. But when just trying to edit a few bits and pieces, it's fiddly having to take it out and then in again. If you just try to change one line in something, or I've typed 3 + 8, it should be 3 + 12 or something.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Right. In that case, then, I think we ought to draw this to a close. So thank you to Doug and Cliff. Thank you very much, and everybody else for joining us.
Yeah.
And we shall see you all again very shortly.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
We'll probably see you all on the 24th, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay.
Spared the Grim Reaper.
Bye. Bye.
Okay.
Always look on the bright side of life.
Ta-da.